When it comes to talking about black criminality, we are really past the numbers here. We're past the numbers and we're into patterns. When I think of the numbers around here, I mean, for our purposes, this is really kind of a digital world of 0 and 1. 0 means no problem / little problem. 1 means huge problem. And once we reach the number 1, then we know we have a huge problem. Whether the numbers differ on the margin, that really doesn't make that much of a difference. I mean, I'm thinking of a weather report saying, oh, we're going to get some precipitation and some wind tomorrow, so be ready for it. Well, are they talking about a spring shower, or are they talking about a hurricane? If they're talking about a hurricane, what difference does it make if the hurricane is 120 mile an hour winds and 12 inches of rain, or 100 miles an hour of wind and 13 inches of rain? No, when you know there's going to be a hurricane coming through in your part of the world, you are going to get ready and take precautions. Well, that's where we are on this whole issue of black criminality. When I hear people coming at me with numbers and they say, "Kind, we need more numbers around here." Well, I think really that person, more often than not, is acting in denial, deceit, and delusion, because you can find the numbers anytime you want. If you don't know that black criminality is wildly out of proportion in so thousands of different ways, well, that only means you don't want to know that. You don't want to know anything about Heather McDonald. You don't want to know anything about the color of crime. You don't want to know anything about a little search engine called Google, which has thousands of articles, and sometimes you have to decipher them. Thousands of articles and thousands of graphics, really documenting what a ridiculous level of black criminality and black on white crime there is in this country. And for the purposes of this video, we're going to look at the word white the way a lot of black people look at the word white, which is anyone who is not black. So about 2 months ago, I started compiling all my recent black on white murder stories. Man, I mean, I was astonished how many there were. And they kept coming in so quickly. It was like, okay, I got to get to that, but there's other stuff I got to work on. I got to get to that, but there's other stuff I got to work on. Finally, 2 weeks ago, I said, okay, I'm going to put these all together, edit them down, chop them down, string them all together, and let's see what we can find. And it's overwhelming. This is still just the tip of the iceberg of black on white murder over the last couple of weeks. And let's get to it, because it's astonishing how much there is.
Tonight, we're learning more about the arrest of 2 teenagers for the murder of a Hartford man over the weekend.
One of those teenagers was arraigned in court late this afternoon. His mother is apologizing to the victim's family. NBC Connecticut's Catalina Trevino joins us live in Hartford with new information. Catalina?
Well, Carrie Lee, police haven't released the names of either of the 2 suspects. What we can tell you is the 16-year-old suspect's case was transferred this morning from juvenile court to here at Hartford Superior Court. He was later arraigned around 3 o'clock this afternoon. Now, because that 16-year-old is still considered a juvenile offender, or rather a youthful offender, there were no cameras allowed in the courtroom, and only family was allowed to be inside to hear the case. Now, police have not released any of the names of the 2 suspects, but when we were outside of court, we did speak to a woman who says that she is the mother of that 16-year-old. Now, Michelle King says her son, one of the 2 suspects who was arrested yesterday by Hartford police, suffers from ADHD, Asperger's, and PTSD. That Middletown boy is one of the 2 people charged in the shooting death of 63-year-old Jeffrey Worrell of Hartford on July 16th in the Westland Street area. Police say he was an innocent bystander just sitting in a park when he was shot. Now, it's unclear whether the second suspect, an 18-year-old man from Hartford, has gone before a judge yet, but both teens are being held on a $1 million bond each and have an arrest history of stealing cars, according to police. Here's what the 16-year-old's mother told us.
I actually heard from it because I had called to have my son picked up for incidents that he had going on. And I was told by the probation that he was being charged with this incident that happened in Hartford. So as a mother, I feel like, you hear a lot of negative things. Oh, where's the parents, what the parents are doing? I'm doing my job. But when you have a kid that has a mind of their own, they're going to do what they choose to do.
Police say Aaron Coleman shot and killed Rowe outside the Blind Rabbit restaurant in Riverside almost 2 years ago.
Tonight, family and friends are remembering Daniel Rowe, a 20-year-old shot and killed outside a restaurant in Riverside 2 years ago. Channel 4's Allison Henning spoke with family and friends at the vigil that just wrapped up.
It's certainly been an emotional night, several coming together right where Daniel Rowe would chain his bike every night when he would come to work and just steps away from where he was gunned down 2 years ago. Family, friends, and loved ones coming together tonight to remember the life of Daniel Rowe.
He has a baby girl that was 6 months old at the time that's never going to know him.
He was a father of 2 little girls, a young man who his family says had a heart of gold. They came together tonight at a place that his parents called a second home.
We all, at one point, worked at Kickbacks together. Daniel and Ray and I all worked there together.
It's been 2 years since the 20-year-old was killed behind this Riverside restaurant. He was gunned down in what his parents are calling an act of senseless violence and something far too common in our city.
We are actually finding out that we're one of the luckier sets, if that makes any sense. I mean, we're only 2 years in and we're already in the court battle with one. Granted, we're still in search of the second person that was with him, but there are many other cases out there that aren't even close to that.
Aaron Coleman, the man charged with Rowe's murder, is behind bars, but Rowe's parents are still looking for answers.
We want to know why. We want to know why.
Springfield man has been arrested for shooting 2 Carthage men, one of whom died early yesterday morning near Sarcoxy. 30-year-old Lafayette Starr faces charges of first-degree murder, first-degree assault, and armed criminal action. It happened in a field off County Road 30 in Jasper County. According to a probable cause affidavit, Starr shot 21-year-old Gage Williams, told him he'd be back for him, and went and shot and killed 22-year-old Taylor Anderson. Williams was able to escape and is listed in stable condition.
Tonight, a major development in a high-profile case.
A person of interest is now in custody in connection to the disappearance of Danielle Sislicki. Fox News' Randy Wimbley joining us now live with more on why Livonia police are now involved. Randy.
Yeah, that's because that person of interest, 30-year-old Floyd Galloway, was arrested for an unrelated crime here in Livonia. But now that he's in police custody, it could mean a major break in the Sislicki case. She is still missing.
No one would have expected this from him. That's the biggest thing I can say is no one expected this.
Elizabeth Rose Newton did not want to believe her brother-in-law may have been involved in Danielle Sislicki's disappearance, but says investigators convinced her.
He, was seen with Danielle on the day she disappeared, and I know that because the police told me, and they told me a few things that they hadn't released to the public.
Livonia police confirmed with Fox 2 early Tuesday that Floyd Galloway is in their custody and is a person of interest in the Sislicki case. He was arrested for an unrelated crime, an attempted rape at Hines Park in Livonia in early September. Police released this sketch of the man a week later.
He grabbed her around the head and punched her on the side of the face and started dragging her towards the river and said that he wanted to have sex with her.
Sislicki disappeared after leaving work in Southfield on December 2nd. Her SUV was found a day later outside of her apartment in Farmington Hills. Her purse was still inside of it. It was widely reported Sislicki was last seen with Galloway, who worked as a security guard at her job. Investigators searched his home 3 weeks later, removing a bed, even a section of flooring. It's unclear if the evidence police collected is tied to Galloway's arrest.
This is a live look as JSO technicians collect evidence after a deadly shooting at a gas station on Blanding Boulevard. One man is dead and a second victim has life-threatening injuries. Police say it appears the gunfire started after an argument.
News out of the East Bay, an emotional reaction from the family of the gas station clerk shot and killed in Antioch. Happened just before 8:30 last night on at the Valero gas station on Hillcrest and 18th Street. 57-year-old Jawada Ta'i fled the war in Afghanistan for a better life in the U.S. He was working at the gas station when a gunman tried to rob the store and shot him. Today, we found the gas station open for business but full of bullet holes. A witness says police officers shot at the gunman, but he got away. This afternoon, the victim's family tells us Jawad loved his job and did everything for his family.
My father was a very loving, funny, caring guy. He never met a person that hated my father. We're the only family he had. He has no other family here. Everyone else lives in Afghanistan, and we're the only family he has. And everything that he did when he was here, it was for us. And he died for us too.
Jury today convicted a Norristown man for first-degree murder in the 2015 death of an elderly East Mount Airy woman. The judge immediately sentenced 39-year-old Leroy Wilson to life in prison without parole. The neighborhood handyman beat, stabbed, and robbed 85-year-old Regina Brunner Holmes inside her home.
An Augusta man behind bars this afternoon. Investigators say Rodney Ivy shot and killed one man and injured two more in 3 separate shootings. Today we hear from the victim's daughter.
It's so senseless. I don't understand. There's no answer why, and I don't think there ever will be.
An arrest in the murder of a North Fort Myers church volunteer. Joanne Leisure was found dead in her condo last week after she didn't show up for Vacation Bible School.
The Lee County Sheriff's Office just announced the arrest within the last hour. NBC2's Ben Henry is live at LCSO headquarters.
Deputies said they had forensic evidence that matched Brett Todd Pleasant, a violent felon who was just released from prison last year. Deputies arrested him today, and they're booking him into jail right now. We did some digging into his criminal history. He was convicted of armed robbery in 1991 and briefly escaped prison in 98. Leisure was murdered in her Parkway condo last week. Her death shocked neighbors and members of her church community. Tonight, LCSO held a brief news conference about the arrest.
I can tell you that Mrs. Leisure was very involved in her church and had devoted her life to helping others.
Her boyfriend called her selfless. Tonight, friends and family gathered to remember the woman killed while she was simply celebrating her birthday.
Everybody was a friend. It didn't matter who you were, and she treated people with respect.
Investigators say a carjacking suspect gunned down 31-year-old Krista Eberol when she tried to run.
A Warren County judge handed down the death sentence to 43-year-old Terry Froman Thursday. The judge followed a recommendation of a jury who found Froman guilty of all charges, including aggravated murder and kidnapping. He fatally shot his ex-girlfriend, 34-year-old Kimberly Thomas, in September 2014 as he drove on I-75 near Middletown. Prosecutors say Froman became vengeful when Thomas ordered him out of her Mayfield, Kentucky home. They say Froman abducted Thomas after killing her 17-year-old son. Froman's attorney said during the trial evidence would show mitigating factors.
Police arrest 2 people in Friday night's deadly shooting on Manslick Road. 18-year-old Gamir Murphy pleaded not guilty in court this morning to murder, robbery, tampering with physical evidence, and theft of firearms. A 16-year-old boy faces the same charges, but he's not being identified because he's a juvenile. They allegedly shot 36-year-old Justin Kern to death inside an apartment on Manslick Road near Elderwood Way.
A former Washington High School football player will spend life in prison for killing a 75-year-old woman. Today, a jury found 19-year-old Perry Ford Jr. guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Carolyn Barnes. Barnes was shot and robbed in her home in September. Ford had been helping his grandmother take care of Carolyn Barnes by doing chores around her house.
Similar lives lived very differently. Friday's murder on 24th and Curtis involved 2 homeless men. The St. Francis Day Shelter describes one, 28-year-old DeJuan Stamps, as a troublemaker they banned from the premises last month.
He didn't have what he needed to be on the right side of the law, and he ends up, in jail for the rest of his life, in prison. It's kind of an awful situation.
The other, 62-year-old James Farmer Jr., the center says was quiet and gentle.
Was the type of person that you knew wasn't going to cause you problems.
Police say early Friday morning, officers responding to an apparent random attack on 2 teens found Stamps standing over Farmer in the middle of the street, repeatedly yelling and striking him with what witnesses believe was a pipe.
Characters across all types of people and all levels of society.
Farmer was killed by blunt force trauma. Witnesses say he was sleeping here in his black Saab where he slept every night. Friday, he awoke to commotion and got out to help, but became a victim himself.
People who know what's right do what's right, and he was one of those people who did it. You know, he stepped up to help, and unfortunately, it cost him his life.
The Baltimore Police Department needs your help identifying a person of interest in a homicide investigation. On June 13th of 2017, just before 4 a.m., police were called to investigate an injured person lying in the westbound lane of the 2500 block of Boston Street. When officers arrived, they observed the victim in the roadway, suffering from trauma to the upper body. Medics were summoned and transported the victim to Johns Hopkins Bayview Hospital for treatment. Medical personnel determined that the victim's injuries were caused by a gunshot wound. Tragically, 27-year-old Sebastian Tucker Dvorak died from his injuries shortly after arriving to the hospital. After reviewing surveillance video from several cameras in the area, homicide detectives learned that 27-year-old Sebastian Tucker Dvorak was shot in the 2500 block of Boston Street at approximately 2:45 a.m. If you recognize the individuals seen in the security surveillance video, please contact
It's a mystery on McMicken.
Shocked, absolutely shocked. Absolutely just shocked that it happened and where it happened.
After a man with no ID was found shot to death here. Only when these pictures of his tattoos were released was the man identified as Spencer Cormier, a popular local DJ.
Spencer's a great guy, reliable DJ. We used him on many occasions.
Chris Leckie owns Cincinnati Accents. He had hired Cormier's DJ services for some of their corporate events. He says Cormier was polished and professional, but he was also a man with a family.
I just knew he was a proud father and a good husband, very proud of his wife and her business, and you know, it's just a tragic thing.
Family of Bernabe Dubon didn't want to speak on camera, but on the phone, his grandson told me that everything he did for his family. That's why he moved to the U.S. to make more money for them. And that's why he was out Sunday morning to go to this grocery store to send money back to family in Honduras. Durham police say on his way there, Dubon was a random victim of murder at this intersection. Kenneth Gibbs, Monet Wise, and Khalil Knight were arrested that day and charged with murder. Knight also with robbery for stealing $20. This spot is less than a mile from Dubon's apartment.
He's been out here for about 3 years, never caused no problems. Been a real good attendant with his daughter.
James Austin is the maintenance supervisor at the complex.
With all the times I've always seen him, he's just waiting for his ride to go to work in the morning. And, you know, he just mingles. Basically, when he's at home, he's really with his daughter and grandkids.
Yeah, Michelle, this happened around 10 o'clock last night. A big break for Denver police who are trying to crack a murder case, but a terrifying experience for the woman who lives in this home. Neighbors in this quiet Torrance community will tell you hardly anything ever happens here.
We had one burglary 25 years ago.
But last night, a dramatic break in that peacefulness. The 73-year-old woman who lives in this house heard someone breaking in. She picked up her phone and called a neighbor.
Said, I think somebody's in my house, and can you help me?
Christine Watson is that woman's daughter. She says her mom tried to trigger her car alarm.
She got her car keys to try to set off her alarm, and they were in the bathroom. They knocked her out at that point, and she doesn't remember anything except for she saw two men, and then she was taken to the hospital.
Fortunately, the woman suffered only minor injuries, but police say a different neighbor had already called 911 to report suspicious activity. Torrance police rolled up before the intruders took off.
Officers arrived there and they observed 2 males exiting the residence, and they also heard screams of a woman. Right now, they're being charged with home invasion robbery. We're also investigating a residential burglary that took place prior to this home invasion.
But last night's home invasion even more disturbing. Investigators in Denver today announcing the 17-year-old arrested here is DeMarco Blake.
Police here in Denver have been looking for Blake for the past 2 weeks, ever since the home invasion and the murder on the southeast side of Denver happening in the middle of May. They put out the word to police agencies all around the country saying that Blake was armed. They believed he was dangerous as well. Finally, they got a break last night when Blake was taken into custody in Southern California, just south of L.A. Here's the very latest now from police in California and police here in Denver as well. You can see the 17-year-old here, DeMarco Yaquis Blake, in handcuffs, side by side with that mugshot of the wanted poster from Denver police. Now, this is video from the scene as he was being taken into custody. Again, all of this happening overnight yesterday in Torrance, California.
Trina and Michael Kuznick were found shot to death inside the car dealership that the married couple ran together. And that's just a few weeks after Trina Kuznick went on camera with an uncanny assessment of the crime happening in her neighborhood.
You can't get the police here. There's either not enough or there's too much crime or something's going on to the fact where we can't get any help or support over here.
It's a March 22nd interview News 5 investigator Sarah Buttison conducted with Trina Kuznick, the owner of Mr. Cars on East 185th Street in Cleveland.
And the glass was just everywhere.
Kuznick complaining about police response times after her business was broken into. Police showed up 6 hours after she called for help.
I mean, 6 hours. Imagine being in a car accident and waiting 6 hours for the police to come. I mean, it's just not acceptable. And I think that we need to really take a good look at it before our city just crumbles apart.
Fast forward, and it's Kuznick's family and longtime friends now crumbling. Saturday, police tape surrounded the family business that was just about to celebrate its 40th anniversary. Cleveland police said the Kuznick's 19-year-old son discovered his parents' bodies after he had trouble reaching them.
I've known this family over 30 years. I watched him work. I watched Mike work on this lot with his dad. And to lose your life, his life, over what? Over nothing.
And I called 911 and said my building's been broken into.
Kuznick's assessment of neighborhood crime back in March eerily described what would happen to her and her husband just weeks later.
How is it right that people can just come in and do this to us and there's nobody to stop them? It's like the Wild West. It's like East Cleveland's creeping in over here.
A Dallas church in shock after a church employee is found dead. New tonight, Yona Gavino looking into the case for us. Yona.
Today, many members of the congregation were told wore bow ties to honor the longtime church employee who was often seen wearing them here at Cathedral of Hope. Lee Covington's murder took neighbors like Kent Taylor by surprise. He didn't know him well, but lives in the apartment right above Covington.
He was very nice, always friendly, usually talk a little bit, say hello.
Police arrested 22-year-old Yevon Rushing for capital murder.
After an intense round-the-clock investigation, Hedwig Village police say they have arrested the man who murdered longtime resident Janelle Bernard inside her home on July 3rd.
I cannot imagine a more callous, senseless murder than the heinous murder of a defenseless 79-year-old woman.
Police say 55-year-old Michael Susbury confessed and is charged with capital murder.
He has confessed that he actually chose that day to go to her house and to rob her. He knew that she was no threat. He knew that she was an easy target.
Susbury knew Bernard was an easy target because he is the son of Bernard's former housekeeper.
Miss Susbury ended up having to retire about 5 or 6 years ago. And since that time, Miss Bernard has supported her. She's given her a monthly stipend, basically a retirement check since that time. Miss Susbury's sons are the ones who would go to Miss Bernard's house and pick up that check.
So when Susbury showed up at her house, there was no cause for alarm. She invited him in and even offered to drive him home.
Sadly, it was that caring and giving nature that ultimately led to her death.
Police say once inside the home, Susbury pretended to slip and fall.
And when she went down to help him up from the floor, that's when he grabbed her, he headbutted her, he hit her, he knocked her through the ground, and then he pulled out a knife and stabbed her several times. It doesn't appear as though he has ever done anything worthwhile since he has been alive on this earth.
Now they hope he pays the ultimate price for this unspeakable act.
This is Stephen Spencer, being cuffed by officers outside the Pittston Police Department in Luzerne County. Spencer is accused of shooting 32-year-old Christopher Williams in the chest, killing him outside the Saints and Sinners Irish pub on Center Street in the city overnight. Neighbors have complained about loud noises coming from the bar, but were shocked that someone was murdered.
A shooting, you never suspect it. I mean, fights and stuff, there's always fights, but not a shooting, though.
Police say the violence started inside the bar after a witness refused to shake Spencer's hand. According to court papers, the unidentified witness says he and Williams left the bar on Center Street and started to walk home. They saw Spencer reach into his pants, grab a gun, and fired. When Pittston City police officers arrived on scene, Stephen Jamal Spencer still held the gun in his right hand. When officers ordered him to drop the weapon, he said, "Here's the gun, I shot him." Williams was rushed to Geisinger, Wyoming Valley, but he did not survive.
You don't have a lot of shootings like you do in other towns, but it does happen everywhere, apparently.
To this developing story now, 4 people charged with murder, including the victim's daughter. The Wayne County Sheriff's Office says Jasmine Harley, Knowledge Kauser, Devontae Devine, and Malquan Drayton conspired to kill Julie Martin. The murder happened in February at a mobile home in the town of Ontario. Nina Porshunkala spoke with the victim's family and friends and joins us live from Ontario. And Nina, what are they saying tonight?
Well, this has been a very shocking turn of events for the family of the victim. They tell me there's been a lot of suspicion about who was involved, but everything just came to light last night after deputies arrested the 4 suspects.
Well, never would have guessed in a million years that there'd be a murder or homicide in my family, you know, even involving an outsider, let alone family to family, you know.
Ryan Flynn is the nephew of Julie Martin. For months, he believed his Aunt Julie died of natural causes. He says she was loved by many.
And she's a good woman. She gave, she never asked, you know, she gave everything. Just a classic, you know, kid comes first no matter what, big, small. You know, hard times, good times.
According to court documents, investigators say the murder was pre-planned and that all 4 suspects were gathered in Malquan Drayton's basement in Pittsford, where investigators say they plotted to kill Martin. Friends and neighbors of Julie say they were not shocked by the accusations against Martin's daughter, Jasmine Harley, and her boyfriend, Knowledge Kauser.
It was probably about a week or 2 after, not too long after all the thawing and stuff, and as they were moving the stuff out, there was just no emotion, nothing. Just quick, get the stuff out, let's go. And I'm sorry, when your parent passes away, that's not how you act.
But in their statements to police, Kauser and Harley were pointing fingers at each other on who actually had Martin killed. In his statement, Kauser claims Harley ordered a hit on her mother, while Harley's statement to police claims it was all Kauser's idea and she was just too scared to call police.
Julie and him did not have a good relationship. He was pretty nasty to her. Let it be known that he didn't value her life.
Based on information in court documents, investigators say Kauser and Harley were out driving in the city of Rochester as Malquan and Devine were hiding in a closet in Martin's town of Ontario home. Investigators say the pair eventually killed Martin by smothering her with a pillow. Investigators say they also stole her bank cards.
As I stand here right now, I just hope someday I can forgive them. I just want people to know that Julie was an amazing person, and it's hard for all of us.
Accused of murder, police say this woman is behind the deadly attack on an 81-year-old. I want to get right out to WBZ's Beth Germano. And Beth, police say there was a key clue here that linked the suspect to this crime.
Well, prosecutors say she took off in the victim's car that was later recovered in Boston. Now they say she killed the elderly Needham woman 3 days before her body was found inside her apartment here, then tried to cover her steps.
You are charged with murder.
It was a brutal crime, prosecutors say, at the hands of Tammy Galloway, the victim's next-door neighbor. The body of 81-year-old Laura Shafrina, found by her daughter inside her Needham apartment on May 31st.
She had 8 lacerations to her neck. She had 4 superficial wounds, slicing wounds to her left arm, and she had 3 broken ribs on her left side one broken rib on her right side.
Gone was Shafrina's cell phone, wallet, and some jewelry, along with her Ford Fiesta that was found the next day on Dorchester Avenue in Boston. Prosecutors say surveillance video shows Galloway buying bleach 2 days earlier at this nearby convenience store and wiping down the car, including the door handles. Prosecutors say she also stayed with friends at this Dorchester apartment in the days after the murder and was seen discarding items in a dumpster.
Horrible, absolutely.
The details were shocking to Shafrina's friends, a highly regarded Russian scientist.
It's hard to believe how bad couldn't be this person.
The murder had shaken this community of elderly residents. Shafrina's neighbor now recalling that Galloway came to him late at night during this time, looking for tools.
She had come over to borrow some tools at 11:30 at night, like hammer, screwdriver. I thought that was a little odd.
A breaking news update. We now know the name of the man shot and killed in Gulf Shores this morning. He is 31-year-old Scott Van West of Fairhope. Gulf Shores police telling us that Van West used to live in Gulf Shores a few years back. Police say the shooter is 26-year-old Albert Smiley of Daphne. He's accused of shooting and killing Van West at the Clark's Exxon gas station on Gulf Shores Parkway around 8 o'clock this morning.
This morning, a young man locked up in Gloucester accused of murder is expected to have his day in court. Today, the trial for Dijon Witters starts in Gloucester County.
Police say he's responsible for a shooting that killed a teen and hurt 3 other people last year in the Ware Neck area of the county. 10 on your side's Rico Bush is back with us now with new details on the case. And Rico, you say the trial may be over before it even begins.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Katie and Donna. We have learned from court records that Witter may enter a plea for 8 felonies. He is charged with second.
Our time now. 5:02. This morning, a young man locked up in Gloucester accused of murder is expected to have his day in court. Today, the trial for Dijon Witters starts in Gloucester County.
Police say he's responsible for a shooting that killed a teen and hurt 3 other people last year in the Ware Neck area of the county. 10 on your side's Rico Bush is back with us now with new details on the case. And Rico, you say the trial may be over before it even begins.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Katie and Donna. We have learned from court records that Witter may enter a plea for 8 felonies. He is charged with second-degree murder, malicious wounding, and some other gun charges. This case stems back to January 2016. Police say Witter played a role in the shooting death of 18-year-old Josh Morrison. Morrison was one of 4 victims shot in the incident. According to court documents, police found Morrison dead in a car at the intersection of Ditchley Road and Gill Lane just after midnight. Another teen and 2 other men were also hurt in that shooting, but they have recovered from their...
And every once in a while, we'll see some brainiac like a Shannon Sharp or a Michael Dyson talk about, they'll pull some tiny little number out of an ocean of data and hold it up in front of us and say, look, this is what the ocean looks like. And they start telling us that the black on white murder is not a big deal because mostly whites murder whites, mostly blacks murder blacks. Okay, and the black on white thing is insignificant. Okay. Show me the white on black murders that you guys keep talking about. I don't see them. We're going to see a video soon about this minister who did a TED Talk called Black Murder is Normal. And it was kind of interesting. About 60% of it was interesting. That's the 60% where he was not randomly just going off the topic and reminding everybody that all this black murder is caused by white racism. But there was one part in the talk where he kind of, again, it just kind of like comes out of nowhere. He goes, yeah, people think white people don't commit, white kids don't go around killing people with AK-47s like black people do. Everybody in the audience laughed because everybody in the audience knows that white people are doing that all the time. That's nothing but a fairy tale. That's part of the greatest lie of our generation, the greatest hoax of our lifetime, the myth of black victimization. And this black on white murder is really the most dramatic example of it. How many of these victims did we see? They looked into the camera and they said, hey, why did this happen? Why? You're asking the wrong question. The question is, how does it happen? and we see the pattern. Once you see the how it happens, then the question of why either fades away or it becomes a lot easier to answer. I was talking to somebody on the phone today, and he goes, "Colin, did you see this story out of Memphis a year ago? Do you remember that?" He goes, "A black guy killed 3 people, then he ran into a cop, and the cops killed him." And no, I think he killed a cop with his car. Then I think he was killed in turn. Anyway, I haven't even seen the clip yet. Because Colin, what they didn't say is that the 3 people the guy killed in Memphis were all white. But everybody was focusing on the cop.
If you take away their own community, because that's close proximity. A very good friend of mine, and I hope we can have him on, Michael Eric Dyson, said people kill in close proximity to where they are. Blacks kill blacks, white kills black people. So unless you got an integrated community, then and only then can you get apples and apples and oranges and oranges.
I think the big idea behind a lot of these videos, even this one, is not when we walk out the door, our chances of being killed by a black person are close to 100%. But I think even more important than that is when we walk out the door, we know that this black on white hostility is so intense that it often expresses itself in murder. I mean, forget the other crimes of violence for now. And that's something we see every day on TV, right? We see it on TV and radio. We read it in the newspapers, this unrelenting black on white hostility, often sometimes expressed with a smiling face, sometimes expressed with in sorrow rather than anger. We did a video, I'm doing it, I don't know if it's coming out now or later, I forget. But I just saw, did you guys see the video the other day from Google? They had a couple of black guys at a big meeting of Google, and they're going to, they're putting this group together, and they're going to fight for racial justice because everybody knows that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. So we're long past the point where people are ignoring this black on white hostility. Now they're in active deception about it and telling us it's the opposite. It's that white people are hostile to black people. Well, where are the white on black crimes? Where are they? If you want to, you want to pull a Dylan Roof on me? That guy was an amateur compared to some of these mass shooters we see all over the country. Oh, you didn't know 79% of mass shooters in this country were black? Guess you don't read the New York Times. I can't blame you for that. So we're seeing these black on white murders more and more. We're seeing more and more people, just like this video, looking into the camera and saying, man, that doesn't really happen around here anymore, ever, does it? Guess we got to start locking our doors or whatever. Guess we got to start putting our head on a swivel. Guess we can't use our headphones anymore. Guess we have to be situationally aware. Guess we can't make the black kids angry.